I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the fire building in the entire rear section.
Now remember, given the payday, has he been accounted for? Okay.
610B. That was the Mayday. 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Coming up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows vented below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire on the 4th floor. Second line being stretched. Primary searches are underway.
Hey, we're back for another one of our old school podcasts. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my good buddy, Chief John Salka. And John, we had a good conversation the other day about tactics and strategy. And one of the questions that comes up when we're kind of roundtabling it with some of the firefighters in classes or doing our virtual stuff, which we're doing a lot of right now. By the way, folks, if you're interested, just give us a shout and we'll see if we can work things out with you, do some virtual classes for your folks via Zoom or whatever platform. Those have actually been going really good, haven't they, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess one of the things that pops up, we do plenty of or spend plenty of time, John, talking about stretch initial tack line, the first 5 minutes, the importance to get water on the fire, the primary search, the roof ventilation, all the first engine, first truck, first chief, all that stuff. But maybe it's time, and I know you and I just talked about this, excuse me, that we spend time talking about the role of the second line, because I think there's some confusion with some folks as to when you say second line, some think it's strictly a backup line, some think it's strictly a firefighting line. and I think you have to have, like you and I've always talked about, that fire ground flexibility. Let the fire tell you what you need, and then you grab what you need to grab, right?
Absolutely. And an important distinction you've already mentioned, but I want to emphasize it more, is what actually that second line is going to be. Second line just means it's the second line being pulled at a structural fire. The second line could be at a really good frame, 1.5-story private dwelling, a really good house fire. The second line might be to protect an exposure because there's a lot of fire coming out a couple of windows on the side of the building, and the house next door is literally getting ready to light up. That could be where the second line goes. Now you may have to quickly stretch a third line to do something more, not more important, but tactically to get right into the building, maybe to back up the first line, maybe to go to the floor above. So, and I don't want to cut this part of the conversation short because it's really, really important. People say, get me a backup line. You can't call it a backup line. I wrote an article called The Second Line, and it's not a backup line unless you're having it stretched to be the backup line as its purpose. Now, listen, when I was in the Bronx, I commanded a lot of fires in the Bronx. I had great companies. And I love mentioning them by name. I mean, I was the captain of 48 engine, and I did run in with them. They were rarely my first due engine because I was quite a distance away from them in the 18th Battalion. But I would run in with great companies, and I love mentioning 46 engine because they were just it's just a great place. 27 truck and 46 engine, just a great place. Not even in my battalion, but I would run in with them all the time. And if I had a working fire, 45 engine was first due, 88 engine was first due. If 46 engine came in second due, they would invariably help stretch that first line. And then a second line would appear in front of me. The boss would be like, Chief, we get the second line right here. Thank you. Now, I didn't order the line. I didn't, there was no actual need for it right away, but I always did. If I had a fire where one line was required, I always made a rule. It was a rule for myself. If one line is required, 2 lines are required. You have to have a second line stretch. So I would have that second line stretch to the front of the building, unlabeled, untitled, no assignment, except get me a line to the front of the building, and I would have 46 engines in the front of the building, often without my even asking. They would deliver a line to the front of the building. Now they were available for whatever I wanted that second line to be, whether it was, you know what, protect exposure 2, you know what, get in there and help 48 with their line. They need another line to help push down the hallway, or, 58 just told me I got fire on the floor above. Get to the floor above. Get to the third floor with that second line. So the first thing as incident commanders that you need to know, and company officers should understand this as well, that just because you're pulling a second line doesn't mean you are a backup line. So don't call the second line a backup line. It's just like not calling it an exposure line, not calling it, a line for extension on the floor above. It could be any one of 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 different things that it could possibly be. I mean, I've stretched the second line. I've ordered the second line. Just get into the interior, find a window into the shaft and operate into the shaft, because the fire in the building had vented into the shaft, and I had 3 or 4 window frames going on the floors above. I didn't really need them to get into every building, every apartment above immediately, but I wanted them to put that fire out in the bottom of the shaft that some fire had dropped into and was really going pretty good. So there's a second line that simply got into the building. I think they went to the floor below the fire because they were able from there to operate their line down, knock the fire down at the base of the shaft, and then operate their line up in the shaft and extinguish all the window frames, at least initially. So, we're going to go on from here about all the other things that are important about a second line, but know that a second line can go just about anywhere and be called just about anything.
Well, and I think I like you talking about, because you and I have talked about this plenty of times, and we're on the same page with it. The distinction of the difference between, there's a big difference between a second line and a backup line. Like I said, I used to say, guys, backup lines back up, second lines can do just about anything you need them to do. Now, that being said, John, let's talk about some of the key points that have to be considered. Just like you do with the first line, when you consider stretching the initial tack line, you got to make sure, number one, you got water, whether it's tank water or, sustainable flow, like from a hydrant or porta tank or whatever, that kind of thing. So how much, what do you have flow wise? How long are the lengths? You've got a specific firefighter in the Bronx in New York City that actually counts the lengths, because there are no pre-connects. But when you get to your volley joint, pre-connected, a lot of, I'm saying that, 200 foot or whatever, so on and so forth, knowing the size line, how, the length, what it's going to do, now all this stuff, is important. But let's talk about that backup line or that second line. There's a couple of very important considerations. Let's talk about the backup line first, because I think that one is a little bit less time consuming talking about that one when it comes to the backup line. But, the whole point of, John, it needs to be the same size or greater if it's going to be a backup line, correct? I mean, right. You can't.
That's a rule. I don't know if it's NFPA. I don't know what it is. I rarely, first of all, I never really think about that rule. Anytime you're on a working fire, you got to, let's just say you still got 1.5 inch line. There's people out there that still have 1.5 inch line. I don't know why you wouldn't have 1 3/4, but let's just say then your next line is probably going to be 1.5 inch line, or maybe you got 1.5 inch, and the next one's going to be 1 3/4. We stretch our first line 1 3/4. Our second line is what, 99.9% of the time it's another 1 3/4 line. Once in a while you'll stretch a larger line. That have to be a rare situation. But the point is that's what it would be.
But don't go smaller.
Say again?
Don't go smaller.
The fact that you need a second line to go do something else means you probably have a developing situation. And why in God's name would you stretch something smaller than the initial line, right? I mean,
well, because you've seen it. You've seen the videos where they've stretched maybe a 2 inch line or 2.5, to do something, and then it's someone reaches up and grabs something they shouldn't have grabbed, and stretches something that, it less flow, I guess it is. No matter what size, there's less flow.
Right. And you and I know you can't use videos of any sort, of any kind, from anywhere. You can't use videos as any kind of a standard, because just about anything can be on a video. We have seen, you and I, and I'm sure our listeners have seen, awesome, great firefighting caught on videos, right? You're like, wow, what a training. This is like a training video. And I've seen videos where I was in physical pain watching what these guys were doing. I was like, oh my God, I hope nobody's got their windows open in this neighborhood. Nobody's watching what these guys are doing. They'll be fired, right? So certainly a video could be good, it could be great, it could be awful, Well,
exactly. And so we're talking backup line, a backup line has to be I would say the same length, same size or greater, okay? And it's there to back up. So before we move on from that one, John, if you're ordering a backup line, 45 engines in there, you got a shitload of fire, right? You got everything going, and you order a backup line for them. Talk to us about what are you expecting positioning wise? Because again, we've got a lot of younger firefighters, brand new, God bless them, the future of the fire service. These young men and women listening to our show, someone may not have explained to them, look, if I tell you to pull a backup line, do I slide up next to the first crew? Am I back behind them so many feet? Am I flanking them? What am I doing? So just talk briefly about what do you expect from any crew, brand new, younger guys, or more experienced when it comes to positioning on a backup line?
All right, let me first say that I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I ordered a backup line into position at a fire, and I'm not sure if all 5 times I even said the word backup line. Now, so a backup line is a line that's going to the same location as the first line to do what? To back them up. This is not difficult stuff, okay? Meaning they're calling for it. 4, 5, 10 to battalion 1-8. Go ahead. We need another line in here, Chief. We got a lot of a fire, and all right, 10-4. I gotta get 48 on the way. So I'm gonna tell 48. Get in there, stretch in where 45 is. Now, what's gonna happen? I don't know what's gonna happen. He's going to have to figure that out when he gets in there. 48's going to have to talk to 45. Right. The 2 officers are going to have to consult when they get in there. 48 to 45, we're here. Where do you want us, Billy? Go to the right. This is a gigantic room. We're moving off to the left here, but we got a heavy fire load here. All right, good. And that's going to be that. That's a backup line, okay? As I said, I think I did that maybe 5 times in however many years I was a battalion chief, 15, 16 years, all right? So a backup line, I don't want to call it rare. People use the term all the time. I think the term is used a lot more than the actual tactic is used. That's one. So like you said, it's going to be probably a similar stretch. If they stretch 4 lengths of 1 3/4, you're probably going to get away with 4 or 5 lengths yourself because you're going to the same place.
You don't want to run short if if you need to work with them or alongside of them. Worst thing is be 50 feet short because you drug a 150 footer off the front bumper or whatever, or off one of your pre-connects instead of another 200.
Right, and the other, not problem, but the other thing you're going to consider when you're stretching hose lines, particularly pre-connects, and that's what everybody in the world has is pre-connects. I can't believe people don't have more. I see a lot of engines with 2 pre-connects. I can't believe every single engine doesn't have at least 3 pre-connects on it. And if you're shaking your head out there thinking, oh, 3 lines off 1 rig, yeah, these are very big, expensive pumpers. They can supply 3 lines.
If you've got the water, some of them nowadays, to have anything less than a 2,000 GPM pump, how many times have you seen, John, you pull up how many fires, how many lines you actually have off a single unit, right. They're not even halfway to capacity on what they can flow, and they're worried about dragging lines off another rig.
Right, and I know there's always a hazard if you do run into trouble, if the pump craps out or we get a burst supply line or something like that, all 3 are going to die together. But lots of times 3 lines will come off 1 rig. If you have another conveniently located and properly positioned engine that you can stretch the 3rd line off of, by all means do that. That gives you at least 2 different sources, but it's not, listen, some people have mandated rules and all sorts of things that they follow very closely, and rules are wonderful things, but sometimes you just got to get a line stretch as fast as you can. All right. I want to get back to which one you stretch. So if you did have an engine with 2 5 lengths and 1 6 length pre-connect, and they stretched a 5 length pre-connect as the first line, and you come in as the second engine or the engine that's being designated or ordered to stretch the second line. Now you can stretch either a 5 length or a 6 length pre-connect to back up the first line. And the first line is on the first floor of a 2.5-story frame private dwelling. What line do you pick? Well, my answer, not the answer, my answer, which is the answer, is the shorter of the 2 lines. I would pick the same length as the company that's calling for a backup. Why? Because if they made it to where they are, then I can make it to where they are. Somebody's probably saying, well, why wouldn't you take the longer one? Then you absolutely will get there and you might be able to go elsewhere. And my answer is, well, that's wonderful, but what does that leave on the rig? That leaves another 5 length or the shorter of the 2. And now suddenly, we got fire on the floor above. We get some extension. Now you leave me with the shorter line to go the longer distance to the floor above. Okay. So if the 5 length made it for the first company, you should stretch the 5 length for the second line, because if another line is needed, it's probably going to be to the floor above for extension. And if it is, you certainly need another length. So don't take the long one just out of principle to back up the first line on the same floor that they stretch 5 lengths.
Well, and that's a great point. I was just gonna say, what happens if you got to get to the second floor? What if it's a multifamily dwelling and you're in one unit and you got to get to the floor above, or you got to get to a unit that's further down the hallway from where you stretch that stairwell or that standpipe? And we've talked about that running short. There's not a worse feeling in the world. There's several, but I mean, very few, that when you make it into an occupancy and you got fire rolling down around the hallway and you start hitting it at the ceiling, and that's as far as you can go as the living room, and the fire's pushed out of the bedroom around the corner, and you're like, every time it pokes its head out, you beat it back, and you're like, well, this ain't gonna work. I mean, I guess I could fill up some pans full of water, run it down the hallway and throw it, because I'm short 20 feet or 25 feet.
Right. And
I love that point you made.
What length you pick is not just a random thing. 4 or 5. Billy, take the 5. No, you got to put some thought into it, because you might be shortchanging the next company that comes with the next assignment.
Well, and this goes back, John, that we've said hundreds of times over the years. How important is it to have the tabletops, to have you're at the kitchen table in the training room and you jump up to the dry erase board and you go, okay, here's our building, here's the floors, which line, here's the fire, just draw an X. Which line will we stretch if the pumper was parked here? I told you Eddie Enright, I've said this a bunch of times. Eddie Enright, when he was in the 3rd Battalion in Chicago, for those that know, absolute legend, one of my absolute favorite mentors, Chief Eddie Enright, retired as a deputy district chief in Chicago, old snorkel squad, one guy, high-rise guru, one of the nicest people you ever meet, great guy. John, I'd be riding, I'll never forget, I'm riding with him in the 3rd Battalion. We're on Chicago Avenue. We're in the car, in the buggy, and he just turns his flashers on, not the whole light bar, just his flashers, and stops and points. He goes, Rick, third building in from the street there. He goes, 3rd building, top floor fire, backside. All right, how much hose do we need? And I'm sitting there going, we just stopped in the middle of traffic. He turned it. I'm like, well, okay, if my rig pulled up here, if my bumper was here because there was cars and a ladder got in ahead of me, or my tailboard was here, it's going to take about 50 feet to get to the door. I'm probably going to lose just under a length per landing. I could get up my 200-foot cross there, whatever. And it wasn't even a tabletop in the kitchen. It was in the car. But how important are those? Just you at South Blooming Grove and you guys, it's, whatever, you're up there after a call and somebody asks a question. So Chief, did you see what they're putting up down there? Yeah, I saw that new building they put up, that new multifamily. Well, all right, let's talk about that, guys. If we get a fire on the 3rd floor to 2nd floor, which line are you pulling? Because all those cars are going to be parked in the way. So it's going to take this much. Right? The importance of the tabletop, just talking conversation is huge, right?
Absolutely. And you and I have talked about, tabletops and using an iPad with pictures of the building down the block. So instead of stopping in traffic, you could drive around or walk around, take a few pictures. Then you can be sitting at the kitchen table or sitting on the apparatus floor next to the rig, maybe, and say, okay, Billy, here it is. You hold up the iPad, you say, there's the fire. He's like, hey, that's the building right down the block. Yep, that's the building right down the block. And that red X, that's where the fire is. Which of our lines? You point at the pumper, you're standing next to it. Which of these lines would you stretch to that location? Let's talk about it. And then you can get into a whole training discussion over a picture on an iPad, standing next to a pumper on a snowy evening. You don't even have to go outside. I'm not saying you don't ever have to go outside, but
right.
Even an interior discussion, even a discussion during an interior drill on a winter night, can get the juices flowing and get people thinking before they read. Don't just reach up and grab one of them. Oh, I'll take the red one. I like red. No, they're not lollipops. You know what I'm saying? It's you got to pick the right one.
Oh, exactly. And it's just, and having the ability to, in your mind, measure distances is huge. And, it's something that I think a lot of firefighters take for granted. I think a lot of fire departments, John, and I don't agree with this, unless they're brand new people riding behind you, the company officer is saying, pull the top cross light, pull the bottom cross light. I've always been a big fan of, if I've got a captain lieutenant riding the front seat, I think they have a bunch of other stuff they need to be worried about. The firefighters riding backwards need to be able to go, right. I mean, I know you agree with this. I mean, unless you've got brand new firefighter behind you, right? You want to make sure, most of the time you're stepping off to, like, you tell that story a bunch of times when you were a captain of 40 engine when you first got there. You turn around and he bumped into you and he had a 2.5 and you said, oh, I was just checking. You go, no, you were checking to see if I brought the 2.5.
Right.
You know, your firefighters know what the hell line they're supposed to bring.
And they knew what they were doing. That's right. And that, listen, if company officers want to get involved in hose line stretching and which line to pull and not pull, then do it during drill. Train them. Training during drill on which line to pull for a commercial building, which line to pull for a second floor, how many lengths you need. And then when you get to the fire, you don't have to say that. You can say, hey, guys, the second door to the left, take the second door. That stairway goes right upstairs. You can worry about more important stuff, not more important stuff, but that can be delegated to the firefighters then, to the nozzle firefighter, which line to pick, because he'll be able to look. And you might tell him, fire's on the third floor, guys. And now they can do quick calculations and figure out what they need.
And the only deviation for that would be if you turn around and said, Rick, you turn the corner and go, Rick, grab the 2.5 on this one. I can already see what we got. I'm riding backwards, don't see it. So you're telling me, don't even think about inch record, grab the 2.5, but you're not telling me how many lengths, which one to grab. I should know that stuff. I should be well-versed with, we've said this over and over again. You should know how much hose you have. And you should know how much water you have. You should know how much water comes out the end of your rifle at the end of your nozzle. Now, one of the things I want to mention before we go too far, and I've seen this happen, I think innocently, it was an error in judgment or just an error. Okay. When you say judgment, you're stretching the initial tack line. They're inside fighting fire on tank water. All right. Somebody's working hard, making a hydrant. The last thing again, we're talking about the role of the second line here. The last thing we want to do, all right, is charge the second line until we have a good source for water. If we're working off tank water, unless we have a large tank, John, I want to stretch the line, get it ready, but I don't want to take any water. I don't want to fill, if I have 200 foot pre-connect, you know how much water is in each length. I don't want to take any water away from that interior crew until we're on a hydrant or we got porta tanks or we're nursing off a tanker or tender, whatever you call it, right then and there. So I want to throw that in there because I've seen guys do that where they've charged. I'm like, no, we're not ready yet. They don't have the hydrant yet. So we just took 200 feet of water filling a hose away from the crew that's inside. And that may be the difference maker for them, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, so much of what we do in the fire service relies on us having the knowledge. Firefighters have a group of, things that they need to know, right? Company officers need to know all those things and then some more things. And then you start going up the line. You get a battalion chief on the scene. You get a deputy chief on the scene. They have other strategic pieces of information that they need to develop and relay or order tactics to handle. So there's an awful lot of stuff going on. And a lot of it gets handled on a daily basis at drill, in the firehouse, or out on vacant buildings, or at the last fire you went to. And suddenly the next fire you go to, you're looking back and your probie's got the right line in his hand because you were about to tell him and he already had it in his hand because he remembered and you trained him right. So that's your input into line selection and things like that, is training your firefighters to be able. Nothing wrong with you turning around or giving them a yell. Billy, you get the 2.5? I got it, Cap. There's nothing wrong with that. You're just confirming,
And if you're waiting for it to go right, and the only time you pull your hose is when it's hose testing time of the year or when you have an actual job, you're in for probably several mistakes or several bad times. Like you said, it's about training, it's about stretching lines, it's about going out into your still district, and you pull up and you see some guy out mowing his lawn and his house is one of the ones with a rear setback, right? And you stop, hey, look, I'm Captain, John Salka for Salka. Can I ask you a favor? We don't want to bother you with mowing your lawn, but I've got a brand new firefighter. What I'd like to do is just have him take our hose line. We're not going to do anything. Just stretch it to the end of your drive, to like where your house is. I want, you know what I'm saying, where you literally get to pull the hose and go, okay, now we're at the front door, guys. How much hose do we have left? Holy crap, Captain Salka. It looks like I only have like half a length left, or I have 50 feet. Well, what if the fire's on the second floor, Tommy? What can we do? Well, all right, Chief, this is where, would we want to pull that 2.5 off with the Y and extend our line, or give us, run the 2.5, drop the Y in front of the house. And now I've got more, you know what I'm saying? I think there's a lot of stuff we can do with that. Like you said, get out in your district, get to some of your buildings that you're going to cover, stretch some dry hose. Don't do any damage. Don't go cyber. But, most people go, oh, heck yeah. They'll probably take pictures and post it on Facebook that the fire department came by my house. They're actually practicing. most places, unless they're doing something illegal, who doesn't want, I just don't see it. I know once in a while it can be, but again, if you don't get out in your districts, if you don't, the building you don't get out and play with or look at or pull up or get out and talk about, right, in about a week is going to be the one you have a fire in.
It's funny you mentioned pulling hose to see how long it'll go and where it'll reach and stuff like that. And of course, I learned something new when I saw a guy that said, take out the hose rope. I said, what? He said, we got a hose rope. He said, they got this big, long length of rope on a reel inside their rig. They carry it around with them all the time in case they see something. And it's got 50 foot marked off with big tape. So they got a 300 or 400 foot piece of rope with 50 foot increments on it. And they just pull that into the building. And they say, okay, yep, look at this, 4 lengths. They don't have to touch a piece of hose. They just run in with a piece of rope. So the one end of the rope is the nozzle. The other end of the rope is the end of the line. And it's 4 lengths or 5 lengths long. Or they say, holy cow, it's only 3 lengths. Look, we still got 50 foot of rope outside the building. This 3 lengths will reach here. And that's a great fast estimate of hold lengths you need to get to
what a great idea. Again, there's another trick of the trade there. You know what, John? I've had search ropes that we've marked 20 with butterfly knots every 25 feet to let you know you're in 25, count your knots. So, if you do nothing but, and if it's a non-dimensional directional butterfly knot, you can snap a tagline on it. But what a great idea to have.
What a great idea. Just a big old black or red 50 foot marker on it. And you can count them 1, 2, 3. Holy cow. This hallway is 3 lengths long. Look at that.
There's fire departments that have rescue rope that they can no longer use, and it's a certain color that they don't use for anything else because they don't want to confuse them, sitting in a closet somewhere. Well, we'll use that if we have to tie down something on the pickup truck. What a great idea to just have, grab the hose rope. I'm like, that is freaking, and now you're not stretching, you're not out of service, you're not stretching line.
Yep. I forget who I heard that from, but it was a great idea. I pass it along all the time.
Oh, what a great idea. And I've told guys every fire engine, every ladder truck should have a wheel, and I'm talking about a measuring wheel, first of all, for doing pre-plans and fire inspections, but they have the wheel with the big wheel on it. So you could go right across over grass, and go, how far, when we talk about strip malls, how much line you need to get into strip mall? Well, how to get to the back of a strip mall, it isn't as deep as you think it is, if you actually took a wheel and rolled it from the front of the store to the back of the store. But God, there you go, folks. Another great idea, a hose rope. Take an old rope, really doesn't matter in a diameter, and mark it every, like you said, every 25 or every 50 feet. If you just did 50 feet, just do 50 foot like your hose. There you go.
Absolutely.
What a great idea. What a great idea. Well, there we are. We talked about the role of second line, making sure, for those of you that do use the term second or backup, what, like John said, it's not as much about a title of what the line is you're grabbing as what is the task you want it for. If I say a second line, that should come with to back up the crew on the second floor, or to get to the second floor and fight fire, or to get down a hallway, like John said, in the shaft. I think, John, you hit it on the head. Describing the task you need is more important than saying backup versus second. Give you a second line, and they should be able to go, okay, hey guys, grab the 2.5 on this one, or whatever, or grab the
right. And I got one more thing to add. Conveniently, the FDNY, we don't have Preconnects. So I know we're one of the few, but we don't have Preconnects. So when 46 engine stretches the second line to the front of the fire building, and I'm standing there, and I get the boss say, hey chief, 46, we get the second line, we're ready right here. Okay, thank you, 46, stand by. They don't have a prescribed number of lengths. They don't have to be careful which hose they pull. When you pull an 1 3/4 hose in the FDNY, you probably got 16 lengths of hose on that line, and you break it wherever you need it. So they'll pull to the front door a couple of lengths, nozzle, back up 2 or 3 lengths, and then if I tell them, you know what, I'm sorry to kill you guys, but I need you on the top floor with that line. You got it, chief. He'll turn around and tell his control man we need 3 more lengths, and he'll break it 3 more lengths back. Versus, oh crap, we pulled the short pre-connect. We don't have pre-connect, so we don't have to worry about that.
But for the majority of the fire service, where I'm going with this.
Well, that's my point. My point is, if you're not like us, if you do have pre-connects, 2 4 lengths or 2 5 lengths and 1 6 length, you better pay attention to which one you pull, because We don't have to pay attention, but you do if you have Preconnects. You better know which one you're pulling, a long one, a short one, or you may be pulling a line that you know is not going to reach. It's the longest one you got, and you know it's not going to reach, and you're going to have to go for an extra length of hose out of somewhere else, you know?
Exactly. Again, this all goes back to what we've said over and over again: training, knowing your weapons, knowing your hose lengths, knowing your flows. What do you got in nozzles? How much water you're bringing, and then to those that are the company officers or the incident commanders, whoever's running the fire. Again, you don't have to micromanage. You shouldn't have to give orders for everything, but if you can order a second line, I think it's pretty important to tell that crew what you're ordering it for. Give the task. Very simple
Absolutely.
thing. 45 when you get, I need a second line to the second floor to back up 46, or 45 when you get, I need a second line. Guys, they're telling me they got smoke coming. Get down to the basement. They think it's in the basement. They're on the first floor. They got
I need you on the floor above. Right.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of good stuff, folks. If anything, table topic, get the dry race board going. Like John said, and we did mention, we don't know them. We love the guys. We love the group. We don't get paid by them. We don't get another free. Sims You Share. Very cheap, like $9, $10 app for your phone or iPad. Like John said, take a picture of a building in your town. You'll be amazed in a matter of minutes. And I'm talking under 5. You can make and it really looks like it's on fire, and it's your building, and you can change the smoke fire however you want, or just screenshot it and take one from the back, or have multiple pictures. What a great device, like John said, to be able to just sit down and let's talk. You don't have to have an actual building with fire shooting out of it,
Right.
To make your point. Let's talk about the buildings we have. Tabletops, dry race boards, training is huge. So, all right, buddy, email if they want to get a hold of you.
Chief John Salka at gmail.com.
And I'm Chief Lasky at gmail.com. And we both have our websites, and we're all over social media. So if you need to get a hold of us for a class or whatever, please do. On my website calendar at prideandownership.com, or on my Facebook page, not my personal, but the Pride and Ownership one, I post all my classes, but I post the classes that John and I do together that open for the general fire service population. If we're doing one specifically, like we're doing a 8-part leadership program at Lynchburg, Virginia. What a great group, John. How about it, huh?
Yeah, very nice.
God, what a great group in Lynchburg, Virginia. We don't post that because it's not open. It's officer training for them. But if we post it, it's there. So if you see that, the contact information is on there. If it's in your area, you see the topic, all you can do is contact Chief Swanson, and he'll say, yeah, come on out, or it's $25 covers the lunch, whatever. We'd love to see you there. If you want us to come out and do a program before you do something virtual, get a hold of us. We always appreciate you tuning in, spreading the word about what we're trying to do. Just old school talking shop. That's just what we're doing, sitting back talking. So we end all of our programs with a very, very important phrase, and that is, and we mean it with all our hearts, please keep the men and the women in our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. I think sometimes we tend to forget about that 1% of our nation's population that actually serves. God bless you if you do, and if you have, remember, never forgetting means never forgetting, and we'll see you next time. Take care.